on today. Several weeks ago, we did a session on social equity, and we invited folks from throughout the industry, from around the country. We had folks who talked about what it was like to deal in another industry and also look at the social equity component. But one of the main things of that session was that we tried to spend some time dealing with defining, interpreting, trying to get a handle on what social equity meant to Colorado and to the country. And so one of the things that I did was I asked Dr. Sharon Bailey, who's an anthropologist, sociologist, social scientist, researcher, if she would come and share with us her background, interpretation of social equity, and how it may be applicable in schools and business, and then we'll interpret it as it relates to how it may be applicable and impactful in the cannabis industry. So with that, I introduce you all to Dr. Sharon Bailey.
Boy, good afternoon. I am Dr. Sharon Bailey. I currently serve as the Senior Advisor for Equity Initiatives in Denver Public Schools. And I think I circled back to the issue of social equity several years ago when Rocky Mountain PBS, their investigative reporter team, did a report called Losing Ground. And they analyzed 60 years of census and other longitudinal data to uncover disturbing trends of growing inequality between Black and Latino Coloradans and their white counterparts. The report should have served as a wake-up call for African-American communities and the broader Colorado community. It revealed widening gaps in a number of areas. And they found that when it comes to some of the most important measures of social progress, income, poverty, education, and home ownership, the gaps between minorities and whites in Colorado are worse now than they were before the civil rights movement. So I had to pause with that, and subsequent to that, we created a report called Gaining Ground, where we look at some of these issues. But in today's increasingly divisive world, the issues of inequity are at the center of policy debates and public frustration regarding a variety of social problems. Widening wealth gaps, unequal access to health and education resources, and tensions between racial and social groups are at the forefront of our conversations. The fact is, we really don't know what social equity looks like as a society, and that's because historically we've never achieved it. Now, though social equity has many technical definitions, its fundamental essence boils down to the broad values of fairness and justice, just and fair inclusion. An equitable society is one in which all can participate and prosper. And the goals of equity must be to create conditions that allow all to reach their full potential. In short, equity creates a path from hope to real change. Equity is when everyone, regardless of who they are or where they are from, have the opportunity to thrive. This requires eliminating barriers like poverty and repairing injustices in systems such as education, employment, health, criminal justice, transportation. And if we're ever to really achieve social equity, I believe there are at least three conditions. The first is to recognize the historical impact of institutional racism. Second is to build capacity of organizations, governments, and businesses to address issues related to equity and inclusion. And thirdly, to make equity sustainable through transparency and accountability. Now, we are all swirling in a tragic and traumatic storm of the COVID-19 pandemic, a historical racial pandemic, and an economic depression. Some say that there are alternative facts and realities and misinformation that are all having an impact on both our lives and our livelihoods. At a national level, the paralysis of our political and economic systems and the denials by some in high places that institutional or systemic racism even exists sheds doubt on our ability to address any of our major challenges as a nation. And some are even insisting that our democracy is at stake. Dr. King, in his book, Where Do We Go From Here, reminds us that we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today, and that we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In today's landscape, we have to critically ask ourselves, are we or will we be too late? But it's only together that we, our communities, our nation can move from this dark night of despair to a new day of hope. And despite this gloomy scenario, I tend to be a hopeaholic, and I do see hope for social equity on the horizon. For example, in DPS, we have focused on developing an equity and values-based plan for serving and supporting all of our students. And we are having the hard conversations around race, institutional racism, white privilege, white supremacy, racial battle fatigue, and more. And then I find hope in the state of Colorado. A couple of weeks ago, Governor Polis signed an executive order committing to equitable and diverse, inclusive workplaces in all state agencies, non-discriminatory practices, and working together and leading the nation in equity, diversity, and inclusion. The same with Colorado Department of Education, who's developed a statewide Equity Champions Coalition. And then we have the city of Denver, where the mayor has developed a task force to develop a Denver Institute of Equity and Reconciliation. And then we've got the Metro Chamber and the partnerships that they're developing. So I do see hope, and I'm trying to stay hopeful in the midst of this dark night. But I, bottom line, believe that it's not enough just to shine a light on the problems. We have to fix them. And in order for there to be any action, positive change and healing, and any movement towards achieving social equity, we as a community have to show up. We have to be able to challenge institutional racism with what John Lewis called good trouble, necessary trouble. And we must critically consider what we must do from here and what happens if we do nothing. So key questions to ask when you reflect on social equity are: what does the concept of social equity mean to you? Are there social equity concerns in your community? If so, what are they? When it comes to achieving social equity, do your values line up with the redistribution of wealth and resources? Is everyone entitled to a certain quality or standard of living? And then what do you need to unlearn? What do you need to learn? And then what are you going to do to support social equity? Is the idea of social equity on your top 10 lists of concerns? Why or why not? So I'll close with a quote from my good friend Cornel West, who says, to never forget that social justice, social equity is what love looks like in public. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Bailey, thank you so much for being a part of this conference today. You are so eloquent and well-spoken. I love the phrase hopeaholic. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it back to the great John Bailey. Coach, you've got a great panel assembled today. Now that your beautiful wife set the table, let's go.
Well, you know, I think that what's important is that we take a look at the fact, a bit of humor here, that I married up. And so I can say that, and I see Lisa and Gabe and some of the others laughing at me. Even Joe Megyesy is laughing, and I know Truman is laughing. So, you know, I'm not the smartest person in the world. Don't pretend to be. I'm just trying to hang out with Dr. Bailey. But having said that, let me just say this. Several weeks ago, we had a conversation on social equity, and there were two pieces to it. One part was on the challenges, choices, and opportunities. in the social equity landscape. Another piece was on the will, and does the industry have the will for social equity to be successful? Today, I'm not necessarily dealing with all of those components. Today, I'm dealing with one issue, and that's delivery. And delivery in Colorado and delivery in Denver. I've been on several work groups. I've engaged everybody who's on the panel. I've engaged plenty of folks in the industry who are not on the panel. And we've had a great conversation as we try to move the needle forward, as we try to make social equity a significant component in this landscape. And so what I've done is I've asked Molly Dupplechain, who's the Deputy Director of Policy and Administration for Denver Excise and License, to come and to share. I've asked Truman Bradley, who's the Executive Director of Megyesy, to come and share. I've asked Joe Megyesy, who is with Good Chemistry, Director of Public Affairs. I've asked Lisa G., who's Director of Marketing for LightShade. And then I've asked one of my former players, who is a owner, operator of Loud and Aroma dispensaries here, Gabe Lindsay. And so this conversation should be, I think, an interesting one. And I'm gonna start off by asking Truman, what is your take on your interpretation of delivery in this marketplace? And how could it be beneficial to owner-operators generally, and specifically to owner-operators who may look like me?
Hey, John, thank you so much for having me on here. This is Truman Bradley, Executive Director of the Marijuana Industry Group. I'm very, very lucky to be here in this group. To answer your question about delivery as it pertains to social equity, I think that delivery, as well as a number of the other license types that the city of Denver is considering, represent an opportunity for social equity folks, people that look like you, John. And, you know, I think when I look at the entire cannabis landscape, delivery is one of the best opportunities, honestly, aside from others, you know, in addition to other support companies as well. You know, we can't necessarily go back in time and distribute a ton of licenses, but, you know, the picks and shovels historically in many industries have been the money makers. And I think there's an opportunity for that with delivery as well as some of the other license types. And, you know, I take my hat off to Molly and all of the folks at Denver Excise and License for really being thoughtful in how they're approaching this, you know, really with a social equity lens. And I think we've got an opportunity here if we work together and if we get this right.
Okay. You know, Molly, he led into the work that you're doing with Ashley at the city. We could right now opt in to medical, I'm assuming. But I'm assuming that what we're doing is waiting on the state to sort of clear out the rulemaking process so that whatever we do in the city makes sense and is consistent with what they're doing so that we don't stumble and fumble and trip all over each other. We know that medical delivery is legal now, but the municipalities have to opt in. In January 2021, recreational will be, delivery will be legal. Talk to us a little bit about what you see in the landscape, what you see potentially coming from the state, and what's your suggestion, recommendation, insight on what we can do in Denver to make maybe delivery an option and a social equity commitment. Can't hear you, Molly.
How about now? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me. And I'm Molly Dupplechain. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy for Denver Excise and Licenses. Yeah, so there is, like John mentioned, a lot happening in Denver right now. There's a bunch of kind of things happening all at once, which are creating a bunch of new opportunities that we're pretty excited about to roll out. And so, as John said, the state obviously created the opportunities for local municipalities to opt into medical or into delivery. Medical is available now. Retail will be available starting in January of 21. And so we established the marijuana licensing work group, which convened in May and June and is having a final meeting next week to look at all of this. And so not only do we want to build off of the opportunities that the state has, or that the program that the state is building for the social equity licensees, but we also just want to figure out all the details of what a delivery program will look like in Denver. So we are kind of looking towards the state. They, adopted 1424 and have now proposed some rules around what a social equity licensee would look, or how that would be defined, and what are the criteria they would need to meet in order to qualify. We want to look at that and apply that to not just the accelerator program or the store and grow licenses like the state has, but look at applying that to other types of licenses too. So hospitality and delivery licenses, which Denver is considering opting into. Once the state, gives it, we're happy that the state is leading and guiding, and we can refer to them for guidance on who is a social equity applicant. And then we'll continue working on building out a delivery program. I think what Truman said is totally right. There's a lot of opportunity. This is a new sector of the industry that is getting off the ground. Really, across the whole metro area, Denver would kind of be first again. And so it's an exciting opportunity. And I do think it's a great opportunity for social equity applicants. And a lot of what the marijuana licensing work group will be talking about next week is things we can be doing to ensure success of social equity applicants through a delivery license or a hospitality license or other type of license. Whether that is, partnering with external partners to find access to capital, working with the industry to find ways to support social equity applicants that maybe want to get a transporter license. That's really what we want to focus a lot of our time on next week, and hear from lots of different folks about what we can be doing as a city to ensure success of social equity applicants for delivery.
Okay. Joe, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, right during the pandemic, you and I talked about delivery. And I told you that I am a supporter of the delivery. I'm a supporter of cannabis being essential during this pandemic. But I'd be interested in knowing, what does delivery mean potential for good chemistry?
Thanks, John. And I'm great to have this conversation with you again. I know we've been talking about it for a while, and I know we've been talking with the city of Denver and Molly and all their great work at EXL and all this. And, we do think for the social equity, not only, as you've mentioned, is this a great opportunity to leverage these new license types to increase Black and brown ownership in the industry of folks that were disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. And it's obviously a great opportunity for that to increase participation in the industry, and this is a great avenue for that. We also were looking at it through a new lens, and this lens of the pandemic. And like when the pandemic broke out, we quickly, were able to realize or notice as a society that Black communities and Latinx communities were more disproportionately harmed by the pandemic. And, so we thought that, we are also, by not having an avenue for home delivery, we're the only really essential service deemed by the state of Colorado that is not allowed to deliver our goods to people's homes. And so really, we're creating another, we're under another policy that is unfortunately, putting Black communities and Latinx communities at greater risk by forcing them to, leave their homes to get their medicine or products at our dispensaries. So really, we put a lot of effort into serving our customers and making sure it's a safe environment and overall wellness, and like having delivery as a tool would be another way to, provide a perhaps safer avenue for folks to come get their medicine or products from our stores. And, so I think there's also that in the lens, but, we are certainly eager. We are very eager to, partner with the social equity applicant to conduct these deliveries once we get to that point. We're eagerly awaiting Denver's next proposal or next meeting on Tuesday. I think there's some exciting policy items to discuss there. And, I think we can design a system now that with delivery that will benefit everyone. I think there's some very meaningful, real social equity goals to be gained here with leveraging these license types. But I also think with delivery, there's an opportunity to generate new funds, because we know also with social equity that access to capital is a huge barrier for more diverse ownership in the cannabis industry. And if I think that's why it's important as we contemplate this, that third-party transporter licenses could be set aside for some sort of exclusivity for social equity applicants. But I think dispensaries should also be allowed to do some limited deliveries in the beginning as well. At the same time, that way they can generate some funds to a certain fund through additional fees or et cetera, to create more capital for this social equity fund. So I think it's key that both of those come on at the same time. So I guess that's what it means to us. We're very excited to have these new license types, and I think it's going to lead us on a path to a more diverse industry.
Okay. Lise, at the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, two of the dispensaries that were held up were Good Chemistry and LightShade. And a couple of people talked about the fact that LightShade is doing unbelievable work. I'd like to think that because you're a member of the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative, and we've had conversations about your work and the direction and the vision that you have, that we've been helpful there. But talk to us a little bit about the delivery piece from LightShade's perspective, and what would you like to see happen there? Because I'm hoping that some of this intellectual property Molly can use as she figures out and works with Ashley and her staff on how to go about making sure that they craft the ordinance that'll be approved by the mayor and approved by council and vote. So your thoughts about how you see LightShade impacting social equity from a delivery perspective, and the delivery and how it's impacting LightShade, and how it can make y'all maybe a bigger player and a more positive player and a much more responsible player in the industry. And that's not saying that you're not responsible, but we can always do more.
Absolutely, John. Well, thank you. It's hard to follow my friend Joe up, because Joe, you're always so articulate, and we're right on the same page. When Joe was talking, I was thinking and writing notes myself and thinking about some of the things that Joe was talking about. I mean, first and foremost, I think that one of the greatest opportunities for delivery is that there's a lower barrier to entry for social equity applicants. So when you look at all the different kinds of licenses that people could get or apply for in the cannabis industry, this one is the one that's going to require the least amount of capital and potentially drive kind of an immediate return for that minimal amount of capital raised. So, and then when you have a commitment from some of these friends that are on this panel right here to either solely and only choose to support those social equity license applicant owners in delivery, which is something that LightShade is deciding to do right now in terms of delivery, you're pretty much ensuring some level or total success for those people, because delivery is a service that people, Joe pointed this out also. I mean, we're still in coronavirus times. There's no expectation that this is immediately going to end, but when it is over, delivery is going to be, it's just a convenience thing for people. So we know that people in California love to have their product delivered to their homes, and they have been able to access that, albeit, I would say that's not a model that we are necessarily looking to copy or model the state of Colorado business model off of, but we can do ours better than that, and will. But it's a service that will create a level of convenience for people that we feel confident that will grow a sector of the industry in the cannabis world. So it's that commitment from companies like LightShade and Good Chem and some of our friends, Gabe Lindsay here on this call, to support those social equity license applicant owners and then to do everything that we can in order to make sure that if we can help raise up capital and, as Joe said, just ensure success for people that are going to dive into this kind of unknown quantity here. And that's how we're going to choose to wade forward into this new world with these new licenses.
Gabriel, straight at you, how will the social equity component looming over the large umbrella, yet you as an owner operator who happens to be African American, who is looking at delivery, how can delivery help you?
Well, as far as me already being an owner, delivery most definitely can help me being a smaller player in the game with 2 dispensaries, with just expanding our customer base across the metro area. Definitely, you know, expanding our brand, getting our brand out there a little more. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just expanding our company in general. That would be a good way, you know, especially because, you know, it's a newer license coming out. There's no more moratorium on it or anything like that. So it's easier as far as, you know, the money wise to get a license. So yeah, that would definitely help. But I think, you know, even besides me with social equity, what Molly said before, when it comes to like different help, like helping the social equity applicants out, as far as the nuances within the industry is going to be big as well. You know what I mean? Just not jumping in, getting a license, and you think it's that easy to maneuver in this industry, and it's not. So I think having that, being educated and having that extra help with the social equity applicants is going to be big, no matter what license, whether it's this delivery license that's coming out, the new dispensary license, any of that. So it'd definitely help me out, just like I said, expanding my business. That's all I'm thinking about right now, is how can I expand my business, you know, without, you know, not having a bag of money right here, just going purchasing a bunch of dispensaries up. So.
Hey, Truman, you know, Gabe's point is an interesting point. But one of the conversations that I've had with some owner operators is that the delivery piece, it's a good piece, and it's a piece that we need. But by dealing with the social equity applicants, are they in fact competing with me? And will the delivery take away from my ability to be as successful as I have been historically? Will this piece take away from my bottom line? Your thoughts on that?
You know, I don't look at it that way. I think delivery, for not just cannabis, but for many things, is here and here to stay. And so, you know, if there's been one constant in Colorado cannabis, it's change. And, you know, delivery is the latest change, but it won't be the last change. You know, as technology changes, as the way we, you know, exist with each other and the way we interact with each other changes. I think Joe made a great point about cannabis being the only, you know, the only thing that's been declared essential that cannot be delivered. I personally would take advantage of cannabis delivery if it were here. And I know a lot of others would, for many reasons. You know, my folks live nearby, and they're getting up there in age. And, you know, I think about that every time I leave my house. And whether we're in a pandemic or not, I think there's a market for delivery. And the people in this business that can embrace change are the ones that are going to be successful.
You know, part of the conversation when I first started talking to folks was about black market. And I'm wondering how delivery, and in some states around the country, the legal marijuana now is outpacing the black market. But here, I'm wondering how black market is still viewed and how it could be viewed in the midst of this delivery piece, because, you know, my background says to me that delivery is no different than having your boy drop something off to you, or, you know, delivery is also going to pick up what you need without having to go into a dispensary. What is the black market conversation relative to delivery, and what type of conversation has it been internally about the impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's really the balance that we're going to have to strike with all of this, right? And as a regulator, that's a big part of what we have to think about. And so we've been having these conversations with our inspectors and, you know, the DPD folks that look at the same type of stuff at the brick and mortar in-person sales locations. And so we'll have to think through possible regulations where we can ensure the things that are protected in the brick and mortar establishment. So, I mean, their state rules gave us a lot of foundation to build off of. I mean, there's some stuff in there around security cameras in the vehicle and with the driver, and then it has, and certain things like that. And then, you know, some of the in-person sales regulations around making sure that there's daily, no more than one daily transaction to an individual and things like that. And so we're working through a lot of what those details are going to look like right now. And that will just be part of the balance that we have to strike as far as ensuring public health, safety, and welfare, while also building an opportunity for this new sector of the industry.
Joe, what can you give Molly to take from this conversation that would be helpful to her and to excise and license as we, us, you, me, us, try to craft this delivery ordinance, the social equity ordinance?
I think she touched on a lot already. I think balancing, you know, the realities of the existing dispensaries in Denver and the existing businesses with these new license types. I think that's right. And I think I totally agree with Gabe that the education is a key part of it too. So maybe whatever this capital is that we can develop through, you know, additional delivery fees or however it might work using existing revenue. There's certainly a lot of existing revenue at the state level that we could maybe hope we're going to work to strive to get it allocated to more projects like this to support some continuing education programs too. And I guess I'd also say that, you know, if we are creating these kind of funds and these programs for folks that were disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs, that maybe that we shouldn't be driving them directly just the cannabis industry. You know, if there's someone that life was ruined because their, you know, parents or they themselves were selling illicit marijuana, like they may not want to get back into the marijuana business. And like, we should still have a program that helps them start a advertising agency or political consulting business or whatever. There should be funds available for those. So I think also that should be maybe a contemplation about any sort of social equity fund that we develop with cannabis funds or whatever. Those funds maybe shouldn't be restricted just to going back to starting a cannabis business. You know, it should be for any type of business as long as those folks, you know, demonstrate that they were harmed by the war on drugs. And I think it's also laudable that the city is looking at these all licenses and with the lens of social equity too. I think that's important. That it's not just, you know, obviously our industry has a very special, unique case when it comes to this, but I do think it's important to look at it with through other industries as well.
You know, at least part of my research, part of my homework is to be able to look nationally and to look at in each state at one, the definition, the conversation, the interpretations. And one of the things that I see is that in almost every state, there's a good neighbor agreement. That good neighbor agreement is not that far away from being a social equity statement. I mean, I think that that good neighbor agreement could be framed with the right message and the right questions that could very easily, Molly, be transferred into a social equity commitment that would show, in essence, if someone looked at your good neighbor agreement, a year later they could say, okay, what did you do? And it's my accountability deal. What did you do relative to contributions to the community? Or what did you do relative to being involved with groups in the neighborhood? Or what did you do in terms of product relationship? What are y'all doing there? And can you give an example of something you just did that makes sense from a good neighbor perspective that could then be construed delivery social equity?
So, can you hear
You're
me?
asking Molly, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was
sorry.
really asking Lisa. I was asking Lisa, but I was saying to Molly, it
Oh,
might be
go ahead,
something
sorry.
else.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Lisa.
Sorry about that. Well, John, you teed this up for a perfect conversation, which I'm super excited about, which obviously you helped us with, a relationship that we have built with Claro, which is a leadership organization, used to be called La Raza in Colorado, but it's it's an organization about leadership around the Latino or sort of environment in Montbello. And we just hosted them to do a voter registration and census information table last weekend at one of our stores in Montbello. And it was so successful that we're now doing it at our store in Federal Heights starting tomorrow. So those kind of relationships, what started from a commitment we were looking to form a good neighbor agreement or put together a good neighbor agreement with a nonprofit wherein we would have a mutually beneficial relationship where we can make a commitment to them that would help us, in essence, get a license transfer in the neighborhood that we were trying to transfer a license in Montbello. And it's turned into such a wonderful, rich relationship just in this short time that we've been working together, based on common goals, which are at this moment in time about driving voter registration and about getting people a little bit more informed about what's really timely right now over the next 6 weeks, what we can do together to make sure that we do everything that we can do to drive a little bit more education and information about what's going to happen to our country here in November. But it's a great question, John. LightShade has always had, we probably have, well, I got to count them right now, but this is probably our 6th or 7th good neighbor agreement, but this is the one that I'm, the most recent one with a nonprofit that we have never worked with before. And it's just very exciting to work around, people whose values we share, and we're thrilled to be doing important work together. And so, to circle back around to how does this all talk to the topic at hand, which is social equity. It is all about social equity. It's about having more voices at the table. It's about clearing the way for people, as your beautiful wife was talking about earlier, getting more people at the table to express, their common experiences and the sharing of our common human voice. And so that's why we're really enjoying our relationship with Claro.
Very good. Very good. Right now, the NBA, the WNBA, most pro sports, they're finding ways to make their arenas voter registration sites. And Gabe, Lisa just talked about voting. So I'm going to segue here just for a second. Do you have any thoughts on the role that the industry could play in terms of being able to encourage folks to vote? And should they be supporting that get out the vote concept?
Oh, most definitely. That's awesome what you guys are doing over there. That just made me want to do the same thing, piggyback off of what you guys are doing and bringing it over here where I'm at, because I think that's big, you know what I mean? And we see hundreds of people a day, you know what I mean? So, and just no matter who you vote for, just get out to vote. That's big right now, right? So, that would be amazing. And I'm going to have to, after this, Lisa, I'm going to have to get with you and just see how you guys put that together and maybe piggyback and coattail that and get some stuff going over my way, because, that's awesome.
Okay. And this is maybe to Molly and to Truman. Molly, you know, maybe not you so much on this one, but Truman, could and maybe Truman and Joe, could the industry, do you perceive the industry as being supportive of voter registration types of activity? And for example, if we did a Zoom on voter registration and trying to get folks involved, is this something that you guys see being able to support financially, as well as helping get the word out in the respective stores? Because there's always can be, you know, part of my history is to go into a store and get a sense of how things operate. Well, if my sense is if I went into a store and someone asked me had I voted, or there was a flyer or a sign that says, you know, vote, not that Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter, but just all lives matter, go vote. Is that something that you think the industry or good chemistry could support? Truman, maybe you first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's extremely important. Earlier this year, MIG partnered with Colorado Common Cause to get census flyers out into some of the dispensaries so that people could register for the census in order to get counted, which is not the same as getting registered to vote, but it's along those same lines of making sure that everybody has a voice and everybody has a seat at the table. I think in our internal newsletter that I send out every week to all of the MIG members, I started by asking all of the members to help out with National Register to Vote Day, which just happened earlier this week. And so I think the timing of this is perfect. And you know, like Gabe said, you know, who you vote for, that's up to you. But voting is a right that folks in my family have fought for over many generations, and lots of other people too. It really is the best part of America, and I think that every industry, including our industry, has an obligation to help that.
Okay, what do you think?
I'd be
Joe?
delighted to participate.
Okay, Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. We are actually putting together a little voter registration effort coming up on next weekend at our Aurora store. We're going to register some folks to vote there. We've done it in the past too, in 2018 cycle. We did some promotions, our voter registration, also on around Election Day, trying to get people through our social media channels and our networks, encouraging them just to get out and vote as well. So we would absolutely support anything anyone was doing on that. We think it's a super important thing and great to encourage that civic responsibility.
Okay, well, put October 10th on your calendar from 2 to 4. CBRT and the Black Cannabis Equity Initiative and a bunch of community organizations are going to do a big Zoom conversation, and we'll continue to make you folks aware of it. Molly, we got a few minutes left, and I'd like to be able to help you move towards something that you'll be calling some of us together with. So Molly, is there a question that you might have for some of us here, so that as you begin to put some of your stuff together, at least you got some input from some expertise in the field? Anything on your mind that you may have a question about or would like to ask somebody?
Well, we just sent out yesterday the presentation that we're going to be going over at the final marijuana licensing work group next week. And so really what's in there are the kind of final discussion questions that we want to talk about with the work group, but also hear feedback from the general public, other members of the industry, other social equity advocates, anybody that has some good ideas. The questions that are in that presentation are pretty...
Anything hot for you?
What's
anything that? You want to use this?
Anything specific hot for me? I mean, the biggest thing for us is how we ensure, and I think I mentioned it earlier, how do we ensure the success of these social equity applicants? We want to, be we want them to be as successful as possible. And so what can we in the city do, and what can we do to work with the industry to ensure their success? What are the real tangible things that we can either write into ordinance or do from a relationship and networking perspective to really ensure their success?
Okay, so going real quick, Truman, what do you want to give Molly to take to her work group meeting or take to her internal dynamic in terms of preparing for her meeting next week? Anything?
I mean, not at this time. I'm still going through it. I got the slide deck yesterday, but excited to participate, and I'll be ready to go on Tuesday, if not before.
Lisa, anything you'd like to share as we move towards trying to prepare for the delivery license or social equity in the city? Any recommendations for Molly, who's all ears, by the way, has done a great job, her and Ashley, in leading the city sessions. And I'm very honored and proud to be a part of them. But anything you'd like to share with her, Lisa?
Not really, just my gratitude for all the hard work you guys have been putting in. Like, it's been a long haul. I know that. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank
Joe,
you.
anything you'd like to share, Joe, in closing?
No, we're just looking forward to the direction, see what Denver's going to go in Tuesday's hearing. We appreciate all the work they've done towards this, and you know, I think this is a potential win-win-win for everybody. We can increase some revenue for the city, achieve some meaningful social equity goals, and, you know, give us in the existing industry a better way to serve our patients and customers. So we're very excited for what the future holds.
Gabe, you and I have the toughest job here. We got to, part of the social equity dynamic in our community is that, and the reason that I think there has not been a lot of engagement and play is because, one, we lack the information on what's happening in the industry. So that's the education piece. Number two, there are some issues relative to our background, whether it's expungement, whether it's low-level offenses, that we need to make sure our community are really up on and know that there's been some changes made and there's some real opportunity here, especially in the expungement area. But I also wanted to just say, you know, you being out here dealing with young folks, out here dealing with different organizations trying to make a difference. What is it that we can help you do as a social equity applicant, maybe as a businessman trying to expand his business, or as a community leader who sees some of the needs in our community and that an infusion of support, be it cannabis dollars or business dollars, what do you think would be helpful from your perspective to be able to help us using social equity as an overshadow?
Well, I mean, are you in particular to me, John?
Yeah.
Specifically, me, or just
yeah. What is it we can help you with? What is it we can help you with?
I mean, with me, like I said, our biggest thing for me and my company is expansion, right? And it all comes down to, you know, capital. Capital's right now, it comes down to capital and what you have to go out and buy licenses with the moratorium. I think we're going down the right path with social equity, and even with Denver, you know, being able to open up those licenses is a big thing for social equity applicants. And even me being a small business dispensaries, I'm able to try and get a couple more licenses to actually expand my business, right? And so I think that's a big thing. And then I do want to say I appreciate you, Molly, you and Ashley. Y'all been doing a heck of a job, and I appreciate you. And I would say, as far as like something to go back to the work group, is I think push on the proximity, right? I think that's a big key, and I don't really hear a lot of people talking about the proximity when it comes to dispensary to rehabilitation. Like, even if that was lower, I think that's going to help not only like somebody like specifically me that's already in the business where I can expand, where there's other places that I can expand to. It's going to help social equity applicants. So when those licenses do come out, they're able to actually find a good spot or a good place to put their dispensary, right? I think that's going to be the next thing people are not really looking at. We're bringing on new licenses, but we're already saturated. We have proximities. Like that plays a big role into it, because it's one thing just to give license out to social equity applicants and then say go fend for yourself, and then there's no space to go, right? Half of the battle is having a good location. So I think that proximity and pushing, seeing if, you know, city council can maybe lower that to 500 for some things, you know what I mean? Because it'll open up, you know, different avenues and different places for social equity applicants to get spots.
You know, Truman, 3 months ago, you and I had a conversation about where is the intersectionality between the Black businesses and cannabis owner-operator needs. And you came up with a list of what many of the owner operators needed. And on the other side, working with Malcolm Evans from the Black Chamber of Commerce, we were able to come up with, this is something we can provide. Do you see that? And the reason I ask the question is because I don't know if the access to capital, I don't know if there's going to be a groundswell of Black and brown applicants wanting to get into the industry. But I do think that in the ancillary businesses, there is a wide open landscape of opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about why we did that and why it was important and why it's even more important now going forward?
Yeah, thank you, John. This is a great call out. So, MIG helped work on a minority cannabis business directory for ancillary services of all kinds, services and goods for that matter. And the plan is to get this up on the MIG website. I'm not as technically savvy as I'd like to be, so I'm working on it. But we've got the list, and the idea is to make it open source so that as businesses come into the space, they can immediately be connected to the folks in the cannabis industry who are spending those dollars now, and to fuel their businesses. And that way MIG can help just in a small way work with the Minority Cannabis Business Alliance and other trade associations like-minded to help really elevate the minority suppliers, vendors, service providers who are out there right now or will be out there soon.
Okay. Gang, one of the things that I'm going to do, and so I'm sort of telling you all now, is that I've been asked by some folks in New Jersey to help them in terms of their, one, legalization, but two, because of the work I'm doing here and the fact that they know me relative to what I've done with Coors and what I've done with Vitamin Water and Pepsi and some other companies nationally, they've asked me to help them look at where they're going from a social equity perspective. They're going to pass legalization. They're going to pass in November. And so one of the things that's going to happen here, and Michael, I may bring you back into this, but definitely Truman and Joe and Molly and the others. There's a gentleman now by the name of Jamal Holley. Jamal Holley is the African-American assemblyman who is really the focal point for that. And I think I'm going to bring him and maybe Ed Fouchon, who is Weed Man. Weed Man is a reason that in New Jersey, they're moving towards legalization. He took the hit for everybody for years, got thrown in jail, was lifted up, ran for governor. I mean, doing some things to bring attention to the industry. And I think it would be good for y'all to sort of engage them, one, to hear about the experience of Weed Man, but two, to hear what Jamal is talking about in terms of where New Jersey is going. Because not only are there some things there that might be helpful for us, but I know that there's some things in this conversation that'll be helpful for him and several of the other who will be on the call. So I'm just letting y'all know that there's something that I'm thinking about pulling together here in the next week or so as we move towards, one, coming up with a delivery perspective in the city, coming up with the rules in the state, coming up with opting in for medical at the city level, and potentially preparing Ashley and Molly and the rest of us towards the ordinance that goes before the mayor and council. But there are a lot of moving parts, and as each of you have said, a great opportunity for us to do some really big things and moving the needle forward. I'm a firm believer in looking at the hindsight so that it gives me an understanding, and you heard Sharon talk about being able to recognize. Well, being able to recognize means you got to look back to see from whence you've come, to see the mistakes that you've made, to figure out how not to make the same mistakes again. The insight is to be able to know what the current landscape is, what it is that we can do, where are the opportunities to build capacity, and then the foresight, having the vision to be able to look down the road and to see what MIG is going to do, what the city is going to do, what Good Chemistry and LightShade and Aroma and Loud are going to do, what 2020 growth is going to do, what the industry is going to do to be able to help social equity move forward, to shine a spotlight on it, because everybody is looking at us, no doubt. And so here's an opportunity for us not only to be one of the first in the country to deal with legalizing marijuana, but also be one of the first in the country to come up with an appropriate social equity response to a lack of negligence that happened here in our cannabis industry. But the fact that, as George Wallace said, they asked him, George, you were a racist years ago. Why are you now running for president? And George Wallace said, I've evolved. And so I would like to think in the industry that we've evolved, that we now see the value of doing the right thing, and that all of us want to get on that page, the MIG, the city, the owner-operators, those who are putting on conferences like this, because we see the value. One, we see the value in the revenue. Two, we see the value in terms of a new targeted audience, in terms of an additional group of folks that we can then bring into the industry. And so with all that, I just appreciate y'all taking the time and believing in me to join me here this afternoon. And Michael, if you have a question or two for me or anybody, please ask it. If not, I'm gonna turn this back over to you. And thank you for having us on this afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm fired up over here. Thank you, guys. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you, Coach, all of you leaders and champions, and I really appreciate what you're all doing. I got to give a quick shout out to Gabe Lindsay, Commerce City. I hope Beth's doing well. I hope Neelan's doing well. I love shopping at both your places, Aroma and Loud. I don't mind paying the higher taxes because I live there.
Right. We need your help on that. We need to lower them taxes out here.
Yeah, let's not get into that too much, but you know, Starbucks told me their lowest profit dispensary is the one in Commerce City because we have the highest taxes. So we did it to ourselves. Anyway, John, Coach Bailey, you were part of the first Cannabis Public Policy Conference in March. I so appreciate that. I want to reiterate a quick lesson we learned at that first conference, which is that expungement is not in and of itself a social equity program. And I know we didn't get there today because Coach kept this very focused, and I love that. But I want to reiterate for everyone who's listening, expungement's great. And I think Colorado made some, the governor now has a chance to do some stuff on expungement. But I love that you guys are looking at doing some real world impact and really getting some equity into stuff. So that was, of course, in March. I got to say, y'all, what happened to George Floyd in, I think it was April, might have been early May, was obviously tragic. I hope it has changed the world some. It changed me. It made me realize I have been silent for too long, and silence is complicity. And so I appreciate that y'all are doing so much. You know, I wanted to throw a question to you, Coach, and others can feel free to answer this. You know, here you got this dopey white liberal over here. What can I do that can be sincere and that can really help move the dial and help make a difference and help end white supremacy and help end institutional racism? Y'all got any suggestions for a white liberal like me who's genuinely well-intentioned?
Well, number one, we didn't get into this particular scenario overnight. And so any suggestions, recommendations, ideas won't be taking us towards resolution anytime soon. I think what can happen, though, is the ongoing commitment for more human beings who are not caught up in being blacker or whiter or browner, but are more caught up in being more human. And so the opportunity to be more human is going to be the prerequisite of the day, and it's going to be the message that is resonating in the streets. And so for the goofy white boy who asked the question, I mean, it's not a goofy question. It's not a stupid question. It's a question that says what Rodney King said, can't we all get along? Well, we're going to have to find that can we all get along, or we're going to end up destroying each other here for racial or revenue or for wealth disparities. And so my whole thing is that we have a unique opportunity. And for those positive, good folk who want to do right and who want to do the right thing, start at home. Look in the mirror. Ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do in my family? What can I do with my network? What can I do at the job? Because there's some really interesting things that are being categorized under social equity. Here, the conversation today was on ownership, but a little bit it was on ancillary. But there are a need for folks who are coming if expungement is going to be a direction, who are coming out of prison and who are re-entering communities and re-entering societies. We need to find a way to give them a one-stop shop. They can go and get the support they need for jobs, for housing, for information, even if it's cannabis information or not cannabis information. But we need to be able to give folks those types of support and services. And at the same time, we need to engage industry in our state to find jobs for folks who are coming out of prisons, who have had their records expunged, who have fallen down 7 and need to get up 8, and this might be 8 for them. And so there's an opportunity. And I think that there's a big need for us to be able to do that in this industry. And then across the much larger table, the U.S. Chamber, Black chambers around the country, major Fortune 500 companies, all of them are trying to find ways to be more, to do more, to be better. They recognize that there are certain things that haven't happened. They recognize that the message that's resonating in the street says not only do Black lives matter, but Black minds matter as well. And so don't just take care of the body, also take care of the mind. And so education in terms of being able to support scholarships and being able to support kids who want a second chance or a better chance in terms of being able to go to private schools. There's a whole gamut of things that could be done out here and a whole nuance of opportunities. We just have to be willing to sit down and engage each other differently than we had prior to the pandemic. Normalcy is not normalcy anymore. And for African Americans, it was not normal before the pandemic, and it won't be normal afterwards. And so that's the recommendation and that's the message. But again, everybody on this call, I appreciate them for being more human beings. Truman, Molly, Joe, Lisa, Gabe, even you, Michael. I appreciate the fact that we're reaching beyond what is comfortable for us, and we're going into a realm of what is uncomfortable, because there are times we need to be uncomfortable to be able to get to a higher level of understanding. Conflict sometimes is important. And so you just got to be able to manage it. And if we can do it in a correct way, if the messenger and the message is one about growth and positive impact and moving things forward, then there's nothing we can't do here if we really want to try.
You know, one thing I want to make all the virtual audience aware of, I'm sure all the panel knows this already. Coach Bailey here has an amazing, you're talking about having more dialogue and better understanding. You do some amazing Zoom calls, Coach. I mean, I'm talking, you get Mayor Hancock on there, and you get DPS on there, and you get the Denver Sheriff on there, and you have these great dialogues, and I watch them, and you'll have 90 people on there, and you can count the white people on one hand. And so one of the things I want to do is I want to encourage more white folks to get on your calls and just listen. Just listen to the things that folks in your community are saying. How can people get on your email list to get those Zoom call notifications, Coach?
Well, 2 things. Number 1, you can always go to johnbailey062@gmail.com. Yep. But the place to go is to bci-colorado.net, which is the website. Yep. Because you can see programs, you can see who some of our folks are in terms of sponsors and members. You can begin to get a feel for the direction that we're going in. But also, the report card that we're doing locally has gained some national attention. Cannabis Trade Federation are starting to take a look at the report card because they're having to do something similar. So I'm talking to the Rabin Group and Christian Cedarberg and some others just about how we take that report card and make it something that can be impactful at a national level. And then the folks at the U.S. Chamber and Chuck Berry here with the Colorado Chamber are interested in a report card relative to how we engage the business community and Colorado corporate community. So it is the best of times, and I'm trying to get it away from the worst of times. But we have a unique opportunity here, and I'm excited as well as the rest of us on the call.
That's great. I checked the list from the virtual. I didn't see any questions there. We had some positive comments from our viewership about delivery. A lot of people love what Denver's trying to do there. I want to encourage the city of Denver to keep up what you're doing there. Does anybody on the panel got any closing statements you want to make? I've said my piece. I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much to all. Anyone got anything else you want to add?
Thanks for having me.
I actually have to take off, so thank you for having me too. It's great to participate. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Well,
Thank you.
all,
Yeah.
Truman, Molly, Lisa, Joe, Gabe. Thank you all. And in the words of the old Negro spiritual, talk soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Coach.
All right.
Thank you all.
Everybody have a good day.
Yeah, you too, Coach. Thanks so much.